welcome to Outside the Huddle with OT. I am your host, Dr. O.T. Porter, the NGFSL's Director of Communications. And as always, I'm communicating directly with our NGFSL family as we work to compete, connect, and unite. In our continuing celebration of all things that should have been our functional Gay Bowl weekend, I am doing interviews with first-timers from New York City Gay Bowl in 2019. And tonight, or rather this episode, because I don't know when you're listening to it, this episode is really exciting because I get to have my very first interview with a trans player, which I've not had the honor of doing so far. So super excited. The player is from Providence, and the player is Ostin Linnehan. I hope I pronounced that right. But without further ado, which is French for quit messing around and get on with it, let's talk to Ostin. Hi, Ostin. How's it going?
Hey, OT. Very well on the pronunciation also. That was actually very good.
Thank you. I grew up in Jersey, which there are tons and tons of Irish people, so I was hoping I got it correct because one of my best friends is Irish, and he would be very upset.
Yes, you did a very good job. I'm actually originally from New Jersey, so that works out very well.
See, this is why I feel vibes, and I got a good vibe from you, and it's because you're from Jersey, and we're better than other people. Yes, said it. I said it.
That's true. That's true. You're not wrong.
All of the people who are listening from New York are scowling right now. Like, are you kidding?
They're ready with their tomatoes and their pitchforks and their
torches
to come and burn it down. They're like, oh no. And
yeah.
Fight words.
So Austin, let's just jump in. I know New York was your first Gay Bowl experience. Did you have any expectations going into Gay Bowl?
I was just very excited to go. It was kind of, I had just started, our league was so brand new, and the concept of like playing football was so exciting for me because I hadn't played flag football since I was in like 5th grade. So I just like was really excited to play, let alone the fact that there was a tournament. Like that was a whole different concept and a whole different excitement around being able to play the sport that I'd always wanted to play growing up and never really had an opportunity to do. So I didn't have any like specific expectations other than I definitely knew I was going to get my ass beat. Like I knew I was going to come home sore and bruised.
Yeah,
that was about the biggest expectation I had was like, all right, I'm just going to make sure I stock up on Motrin and water and hope for the best coming out of this.
That's a good expectation because most people don't realize the level of competition there until they're already in it, and you're like, oh, that.
Yeah.
So good. You were ahead of the ball game.
Oh yeah.
So I know you usually talked about never being able to play when you were younger, and I'm assuming that's because one, you are a trans male. So how did Gay Bowl reaffirm your trans identity, if it did?
For me, it was more like, I guess, realizing that I belonged somewhere. Like for me, initially joining football was like a life-changing thing for me. It was kind of a lifesaver. It was sort of like my last-ditch effort to get involved in my community and find a place, find some footing, because I was coming out of some really terrible, I was coming out of a very dark place. I had just gotten divorced. I had just lost my grandmother. I was having trouble with my job. Like things were just kind of falling apart around me. And so finding football in general really kind of helped to reestablish some sort of normalcy in my life and some kind of routine. And I just felt really accepted, and there was no like question about my identity or whether or not I belong there. It was just welcomed. And then going into Gay Bowl, it was like, great, it's the same thing, but it was just on a much bigger scale. several hundred people doing that instead of just a small pocket of my community doing that. And that was really exciting, as, because yes, unfortunately growing up, I didn't have the opportunity really to join. I played sports, but I always played the girls' sports. I was always on the girls' teams, and I played softball, I played basketball, I played flag football in elementary school, and I was the only girl on the team. Mm-hmm. And then when I got into like high school, the closest I could get to football was marching band, and I was a major band nerd for about 9 years of my life. And for me, that was the closest I could get to the sport, and I would take it. I was going to take it. That was all I got. I was like, all right, I'll accept that,
Yeah.
And it kept me involved, and it kept me, I got to still be around it, and it was always a lot of fun. But like I remember sitting in the stands always like wishing I could be on the field. I always loved playing football, and I used to play like pickup games with friends and stuff, but it wasn't quite the same,
Right. Yeah.
not the same aspects.
Oh, absolutely get it. It's great. As you were talking, I was like tearing up because I'm a ball of emotions in my old age. But that's the point of Gay Bowl, to give people that sense of belonging and inclusion and support. And so it's great to hear that you felt that. What was your experience with sportsmanship on and off the field?
I thought the sportsmanship was wonderful. I really, for me personally, I didn't run into any issues with anybody. Mm-hmm. I know I got grumpy when I wasn't doing well, but I was, I never really felt like people were taking that out on each other, or that there was any kind of like negativity from other teams. We met so many people, going into that, and there were just every time you turned around, there was a team from another state, and there's a group of people, there's the volunteers, and there were just, it was people, it was like an ant farm, like there were just people everywhere. Yeah. And even playing some of these bigger teams, we came in, like I said, we were brand new. It was we had just finished our first ever season of flag football, and then we were like really ambitious, and we're like, yeah, we're going to go to Gay Bowl, and we all got there and went, what are we doing? What is going on? We were not expecting so many people, and but we had. I remember after our first game, and I believe it was against, who did we play? I think we played against a team from Utah.
Okay.
And I remember the guys coming off the field after the game and giving us pointers and helping us out and giving us tips, because unfortunately we lost that particular game. But we played hard, and the guys came off the field very much like, you guys were great to play against, and here's what you should, here's some things to look out for, here's some things that you can try. And it was just nice to have that feedback, that even though we are competing with each other and everybody's trying to make it to number one, to help each other out was just kind of cool to see that, even from other teams, they're like, oh yeah, try this. And they would come watch our games. We would try to go watch their games. All these other teams were trying to support each other and cheer each other on. It was very cool to see.
Yeah. Utah is one of those teams that are just fantastic. Beyond being so hot, the men on that team are so good looking. Anyway, this is not about my thirst. This is about your experience.
The first level was real.
Yeah, it was.
The first level was real.
What most surprised you about Gay Bowl in New York City?
The thirst level. You said that. Well, it was for sure less surprising and more enticing and exciting. And I was like, well, I definitely have to come back and do this again.
Yeah.
Because there's so many beautiful people across the board. Men, women, trans folks. There's the people in general are just wonderful. Honestly, I think the most surprising thing was really just how big it really was. You talk about it and you kind of conceptualize it a little bit. You're reading, you're okay, there's a lot of teams here. And then you go to the opening night ceremony, you're like, wow, there's a lot of people here. You don't really expect that kind of crowd. It was wild. It was fun. It was exciting, and there's always new people to meet, but it was intimidating, walking in brand new in our little Providence pod. We just kind of stood there with each other, looking around, and everybody's hugging each other, and everybody's done this before, and we're like, well, who do we say hi to first? Where do we start? There's just people everywhere. There's teams all over the place, and it was crazy. Like that was probably the most like kind of shocking piece of it. Was really just really in person how many people really are there and participating in everything.
Yeah, it can be daunting, and I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how to phrase this. You came to the largest Gable in the history of Gables. That was the most amount of teams we've ever had. That's the most amount of players we've ever had. And so for you, I could only imagine, because I went to my first Gable a decade ago in Phoenix in 2010, and there were, I think, 18 teams, maybe about 500 or 600 people. So it was big, but you came. There were, I think, 1,500 players at Gable last year. So
it was like being a pride. It was being a gay pride all over again.
Yeah, it was triple the amount of people. So I can only imagine being the new people how daunting that must have been. But I watched a few of your games. I don't know that you even remember, but I watched Providence play at least 3 different times, and I enjoyed you all so much. It was so much fun. It was just a delight watching you on the field, having a good time, learning, because we've all been there. Everyone in Gable has been the new team. So
yeah, it is definitely a learning curve to it, because we play with we play on our own, and we know how we play, and then of course you have no idea walking in how other states, other teams are doing, how they're playing, what their strategies are, which is. Especially, like, it's not like NFL where you watch it on TV and you're like, oh, I get a general idea of how this team might play. Like, we had no idea what strategies to use walking in.
Yep. It's one of those things. What do you think is going to be the most lasting impact from your first Gable experience?
Oh, probably the camaraderie that we had. I mean, our team, our whole league came together in such a different way. Like, we came back with like just a more tight-knit group. Like, we just had so much fun meeting other players. Like, we were able to make some connections with folks on other teams, which was great. Like, that really helped. I think helped alleviate some of the anxiety too about the overwhelming amount of people. We were able to make a few connections here and there, and we made some friends with some of the guys from the Honolulu team, which was really fun.
Oh, my God, they're also so much fun.
They are such a riot. They are an absolute riot to hang out with and chat with. And we still hang out on, like, we all chat on Facebook still, and, we've been we were, of course, very disappointed that Gable wasn't happening this year, because we were looking forward to seeing them again.
Yeah.
Which we'll have to wait till Toronto, hopefully, to see them. But it was, we came out making some crazy new friends, and just the Gable itself, it is an experience. Like, it is just a lasting experience that you don't get that anywhere else. It's hard to explain it to people. Like, unless you experience it, how do you, I've been to Comic-Cons, I've been to Pride Parades, I've been to all these things with that kind of energy, but it's different when it's more intimate. It's right. Even with that many people, it's still a more intimate experience that you don't get anywhere else. Right. You don't get that just going and hanging out with 1,500 people somewhere.
I have an idea of how you're going to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So the NGFFL model is compete, connect, unite. If you had to choose one of those terms that encapsulated your Gable experience, which one would you pick?
Definitely, I think connect. Because connection for me was the biggest piece of the puzzle. Coming into football, being brand new, like having no idea what to expect starting out, even in my own league. It's been the connections, especially through everything that's been going on with this pandemic and not being able to have a season. The last 2 seasons, really, we've had to put our whole year on hold, which has been really unfortunate. But the connections are still there. I still have my football family's still there. Like, we still try to see each other when we can. We've done my original flag football team. Like, we've done Zoom calls together just to like check in with each other and hang out because we haven't seen each other in so long. Having the connections across the country, having the connections in Hawaii, having the connections in Utah, having connections in California, like being able to talk to people from all over and even from Canada, like just being able to talk and have those friendships that have kind of happened organically. Has been really nice. Like it's just something about those connections is very, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like it's a very warm feeling. It's a very kind of nice, connection to have, in that there's still community connection outside of my own.
Right.
It's not just Rhode Island. It's not just Providence community. It's the entirety of the gay community across the country, which is a very different feeling.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One last question, and then I will let you go off about living your life outside of NGFSL and Gay Bowl. If there is a trans person that this podcast magically reaches but feels apprehensive about joining the NGFSL, what words would you want that person to hear?
I would say that the best thing that you can do is to try, like to just take the leap. Because for myself, and I can only speak from my own experience, but for myself, as a trans person, I spent, especially again after specifically going through a divorce, that left me in a really dark place because, for trans folks, and again, like only speaking really from my own experiences, but I think for some trans folks that I've spoken to or that are friends of mine, we have a tendency to assume the worst in a lot of ways when it comes to friendships and relationships and where we belong, especially, seeing where the political climate is. And, trans folks have a tendency to kind of fall into this weird little bubble in our community where we're accepted and we're supported, but then there's still pockets of the community where, like, we're still kind of looked at, for lack of a better word, as the freaks of the community.
Right.
And it's, that's not an all-encompassing thing, but there are still pockets of that you run into.
It's real.
So it is. It's very real. And that sort of that transphobia still runs rampant in our own community, which is really unfortunate. And that, for me, that was hard for me to, like, wrap my head around, like, okay, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to do this, and let's just see what happens. And it was it really was the best decision I ever made in the last, couple of years of my life. It was the best decision I made because I was welcomed so, like, just open arms and so readily welcomed to this league, and then, to make these connections and be able to educate. So, like, for me, I choose to educate people about trans issues. Not every trans person will do that because it is exhausting. It is mentally draining. And I choose to have those conversations. But what I found was that the people that I was having these conversations with had done some of the research on their own, which was unusual for me. They had some semblance of kind of what was going on in the community, and they were willing to learn more. And my league has been wonderful. My board of directors has been amazing about making sure that the space is as safe and as respectful as possible for people from all walks of life, not just from the trans community, but they, have really been very diligent about kind of a zero tolerance bullying policy. Not that we've run into that, thankfully, but but been very, emphasizing, they emphasize that it's very important that we're, respectful of each other, and that, somebody doesn't want to talk about something or doesn't want to answer questions about something, you need to respect that individual's decision and that kind of thing. And, there's really, in the experiences that I've had, and from what experiences I've heard from about, other leagues and other players and things, there really isn't there hasn't really been any negative transphobic issues amongst different leagues in different cities that none that I've heard of, none that come my way. And I think that it's such a nice feeling to feel like you finally kind of have a place when you're looking for it so hard in our community, like to find somewhere that you can just instantly make 20, 30 friends turning around and saying hello, you know, and that was for me coming out of coming from nothing. I really had very few friends coming into the football league, and then all of a sudden I have, every time I go out to the local bars and stuff, like if I go out to a restaurant or a bar or go out to Providence, I run into somebody every time.
Yeah.
You know, always running into. Now, granted, we have a much smaller community, a much smaller state than most places, but you know, it's nice to be able to do that. You know.
Yeah, it's not different in Houston, and we're huge, so yeah. But that's great. Those are great words of wisdom to anyone who's listening who may not already be in the NGFFL and want to join. Thank you for sharing those, because it is important that we foster and cultivate self-respect of everyone across the LGBTQ plus spectrum. I always forget the other letters. So
there's a lot of them.
There's so many letters.
Many letters.
And I already have my own letters to deal with, O and T, and sometimes people mix them up and they call me OJ or TO, and I'm like, look, I can't deal with letters.
It's 2 letters. It's only 2.
It's 2 letters. But, Ostin, thank you so much. This was exactly what I hoped it would be. It was better than I dreamed. It was fantastic. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your voice. And I hope that you continue to do big things in Providence. And I hope that you take your experience and bring some of that knowledge to the NGFFL Board of Directors at some point throughout your tenure. Maybe someday. Maybe someday soon. Yeah. So thank you so much, Ostin. Thank you to everyone listening for joining us on Outside the Huddle. So this has been a fantastic Gable celebration weekend, and I hope you all are enjoying these episodes. And please go back and listen to all the other episodes of Outside the Huddle whenever you get an opportunity. Until next we meet, be kind to yourself and be kind to everyone you meet as you compete, connect, and unite in the NGFFL. Have a good one.